Let's get into it now, starting off with Bitcoin as usual. We'll start within the shorter term timeframes right here, of which I want to follow up on a couple of signals that were baking yesterday that were confirmed in the early morning hours, and now we're seeing kind of follow through from these. Now, in this case, we do see many drives of hidden bearish divergence here, all the way up to a 6 hour. This might even be up all the way to a 12 hour as well. Sorry, no, it is not, but it is very, very close right there, to be fair. Anyways, on the 6 hour, we certainly do have it, and that is a rather powerful time frame. What also kind of makes me a little bit more anticipating a continuation of this move is the fact that BBWP is expanding off of, extreme lows right here. So this move I would not really consider being quote unquote done until we see BBWP really start to turn down again and get a negative slope, preferably, somewhere at minimum above about 50 percentile. So I do suspect that this move, probably has some more to go earlier, early within this week right now. On top of that, we do see, of course, over here on our short-term time frame stochastic momentum, that while momentum is is really, really low here already, kind of in the extreme zones, it is looking like it wants to keel back on over again, actually, and pressure will be down on the 12 hour, for example, as long as Bitcoin's below about 38,925 in this case. Now, obviously, Bitcoin's like right around there right now, so a lot can change, but within the context of this, as long as Bitcoin's below there, risk does remain to the downside for even short-term continuation. Combine that with the 6 hour stochastic momentum, this is where things become a little bit more interesting as far as I'm concerned, because that same number is a little bit higher, to be fair, 39,925. But you can see in this case, that 6 hour stochastic momentum, again, volatility on the low. This is an HVP of Stochastic, by the way, and also getting rejected from getting out of the bearish control zone in this case. So the lower term timeframes likely do suggest, another drive to the downside. Same thing on the 4 hour right here, 41,125. Now the pivot's starting to rise up, rather significantly, of course. The 3 hour is going to be showing 39,750, currently almost $1,000 away from price action right now. And hourly is probably up. Yeah, it is going to be up above 38,700. So there's going to be bounce along the way, obviously. But I do suspect that Bitcoin does trade lower here before trying for potentially another, major low in this case. How low can Bitcoin go? Well, in this case, we did identify that any sort of a break below our current low side structure at about 39.3 to 39.2 very likely does lead towards the LARP line right here. Somewhere down around the blue box territory is kind of where I'd be looking for on a nice wick and a bounce from that region. That could be as low as about 37 even, and pretty and as high as about 37.7-ish region. So about $1,000 kind of lower than where we're at right now. So the ranges are pretty tight here, to be fair, but ultimately this is all kind of building into what I think is going to be like the next big signal, if you will. Now, keep in mind the 5-day charts, all of those are still very much relevant right here. But the next thing that I'm kind of waiting for is the weekly, as the weekly follow through from this is going to imply targets much lower over time. Now, again, I want to be very specific with the term over time, because I don't think that this is all going to play out in like one day. I think this is going to play out over the next couple months if you start to confirm this. But the weekly stochastic momentum will actually turn down at the end of this week with any sort of a closure below 39,300. That's on CME. I think spot price action is maybe a little bit, significantly lower, 38,600. But if these do happen, that's going to make me really consider that Bitcoin does take a nice leg down, very, very likely to $34,000 to $35,000, probably another major bounce there, and then, potentially lower over time as well. In the short term, however, as always, I do want to offer up invalidation conditions. What would essentially make me short term bullish, and then we can also talk about long term as well. For the short term, it's different. For the long term, it's pretty much the same here. But in this case, I would be looking at, in this case, if Bitcoin were to trade back above essentially its breakdown area, which was 39,900, that would be good for the short term. Obviously, that's not very helpful for right now. And again, the short term on the hourly probably is going to, play out a little bit of a bounce here, maybe back up just north of 39, maybe even to the mid 39s or so. But ultimately, the short-term timeframes are, well, trendy right now, to be fair. For the daily, I would call a major macro bear trap, actually, with any sort of a daily closure basically above about $44,000. The reason why that is because that would be where the 618 Fibonacci retracement is right here. So, getting back above there, I think would massively, or statistically speaking, massively reduce the probabilities that this is, just another fake rally. So until that happens, again, risk does remain low as far as I'm concerned. And then also the open interest. I've actually been getting a lot of shit around this, which is kind of funny, but it's been working. So, for all the people who have those ideas, that's fair enough. But it's kind of playing out right in front of our faces. Anyways, the open interest still, somewhat in a precarious place here. Most importantly, though, we did see a local high on price action at that $48,000 region right here, plus an extreme read, which I identify as anything above 13.5 billion on open interest. And that has on average, that has on not on average, but at the minimum side led towards a 20% pullback from that high, and as much as a 50% pullback from that high as well. Now, if we do measure it from top to bottom where we're at right now, we probably have already played out that 20% move. Very, very close, actually, 19.96. So you could basically say, that is very likely so. So what does that align with? Probably does mean that Bitcoin bounces, relatively soon here, maybe after one more grind to the downside. But ultimately, I do look at this signal right here, or sorry, not this signal, but this indicator as not having fully reset until we're at minimum back down around like just above 10 billion. That is, anytime that we have seen these extreme reads in the past few years, reset, it has come down at minimum to 10 billion before the next sort of bounce or major bottom attempt. And for right now, you can see that we're at 12.76 billion on the daily. On the hourly, it's actually a little bit more nasty here, showing 12.95 billion actually. So what does that essentially imply? Well, combining that with the funny rates, which if we go to the hourly, people are actually shorting into this. So to be fair, there probably is going to be a squeeze, like a very short-term squeeze, to be fair. Maybe after one more leg down and, probably catch all of the late shorters off guards if I had to guess. As far as the daily goes, though, again, still a little bit more downside angle here, to be fair. And again, I want to point out the massive divergence that we saw between open interest in that last rally in late March when Bitcoin got to $48,000 and printed an open interest read of 14.5 billion versus what we even saw just a few months ago in late December when Bitcoin played out that rally towards $52,000 on about $1 billion less open interest. So, these things do matter. And I just want to point this out because, well, we saw it happen in front of our very faces. And, I guess it could have been that simple, I suppose. Anyways, again, I want to be very, very specific that there's very likely to be bounces along the way. And I wouldn't get, it's not wise to get it's not wise to be looking for like a fucking 30 to 50% move exactly from where you're at without having like any sort of major signals. So the next major signal that I'm looking for is obviously the weekly stochastic. Of course, this is in combination with what we saw 2 weeks ago, where the weekly confirmed hidden bearish divergence right here. And now I would combine this with the 5-day signal. So we'll go through this whole rigmarole one more time. Why not, man? Why not? Because it is becoming more and more relevant here. And this, again, does make me consider that probabilities, are still in favor for the downside. They are not fully confirmed just yet, though. But in this case, I'll go through the explanation. The 5-day BBWP measuring volatility, the dispersion of returns, has gotten down to what I consider kind of extreme lows on the 5-day. Anytime that we have seen it this low or especially lower on the 5-day, the expansive phase from there has led to an average gain or loss of 45% from that expansion, which we have actually not seen just yet. We haven't seen that just yet. At least on that day. And it takes about a little over 40 days as well. So, about a month and a half, let's say, on average to play out that move. We can measure out all these ones right here, obviously. And then the reason why I'm calling this out is because, well, we did reach extreme lows right here. And by the way, with this last move that we're seeing right now, or this current move that we're seeing right now, you will notice that the 5-day BBWP is once again getting a positive slope, which is the first indication that, the momentum direction is likely going to be the direction for that expansion of volatility. Obviously, just like back on over here, I want to see this with like 2 closures above the moving average and then also the moving average getting a positive slope. That would very much solidify it. And then, as we have seen in the past on all these prior expansions, the first leg up from that, puts in like 20 to 30 percentile gain on the, on the BBWP read. So that first move does typically happen rather fast and, well, rather harshly, if you will. So in this case, I will once again bring up the 5-day stochastic momentum over here, of which the reason why I focus on this is because it has been getting the right direction when we do look at that expansion of volatility on the 5-day. And again, down, up, down. Well, what happens right here? Down, up, down. And as of right now, we do see downside momentum is quite likely, and that will be remaining with downside pressure as long as Bitcoin is closing on the 5 days below 45,550. So again, when I'm thinking in terms of probabilities, I do think that that is a greater risk to the downside right now. And then also kind of playing out a bit of a trendline regression test here at the edge of the bullish control zone. So that would be considered a rejection if we do get the follow through, maybe on like the next couple closures here, depending upon how severe it is. And then obviously the DMI is also postured around that region. And well, we could then kind of anticipate targets from that based off of the historic signals on this, which would imply, if we saw the volatility expansion come with downside, that would imply somewhere down around about 23 to 25,000 bucks. If you see it come to the upside, 56 to 60,000 bucks. It's still possible until we actually get this expansion. I like fully confirmed. I would not be willing to like just blindly say Bitcoin's going to have a shattering, moment down to like low 30s and then probably 25. But I suppose now, if you want me to come up with the best case scenario for the boo laws, it'd be something like this, where Bitcoin comes down. Let me pick out a fresh chart here. Maybe this one will work. Yeah, this one will work. And it comes back down into this base at about the $35,000 region, maybe even gets a wick a little bit lower, puts in another low there, grinds it out for another few months, and then specifically flips back above $44,000. Or if you want to be super conservative, about 46,000 bucks right here, this local high right here, that would obviously be incredibly bullish long term. Possible, yes, definitely possible. But the longer that Bitcoin kind of lingers down here, the lower probability that does get. So the thing is with all of this is that I am unwilling to call any sort of like major move to the downside today. The reason why is because I don't think that Bitcoin has the momentum to do it. If we go over here and reference the higher term timeframe stochastic momentum, you'll notice on the daily, it's already incredibly low here. And the problem with that is that it just makes it difficult to keep it, that far down on this next closure. Now, to be fair, I actually will have to eat my words here, because on the daily for CME, which the signals on CME, especially for Monday and Tuesday, do have a higher fidelity, is showing downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 41,217. Now that's more than 2,000 bucks away from where we're at right now. So perhaps a little bit, perhaps quite likely that Bitcoin does meet that condition. The problem is that when you're this far down, it's going to be difficult to maintain that momentum. On that schedule. The 2-day, which is closing, is this one closing tonight? I don't know. No, it's not, but that one actually remains healthily down. You know what, the more that I look at this, maybe I'm completely wrong about that now that I kind of consider it. On spot price action, it's a bit different here, obviously, way further down, 43,000 bucks is the pivot. Daily, again, way down, 40,000 bucks is the pivot. So I guess I'm kind of splitting hairs here, but ultimately, that's kind of how I'd be looking at things for the time being. And I do expect that Bitcoin very likely bounces off this blue box territory before potentially breaking lower. I wouldn't really call like a major shattering moment until Bitcoin closes dailies below about 37 or 37.5. That's where I do think that you will see that next major, kind of knife move, if you will, somewhere between about 34.5 to 35,000 bucks. Anyways, hopefully that was helpful. And there you go for Bitcoin, sirs and zers, and nice.